Okay, well, I'm excited about this sequence. It starts out with a wall near your practice space. You've got two blankets on top of two blocks that are horizontal, crossed underneath the blankets. And you're going to sit on the bolster, the short end of the bolster next to the blankets. And you've got a belt around your thighs, so you're buckled up. Okay. So now that you're buckled up around the upper legs, go ahead and let the legs rest on the blankets. Okay. And with the position of your seat on the end of the bolster, if you have not rolled back onto your spine, you want to get a feel that your legs are supported on the blankets and the blocks. So the blocks are under the blankets. Okay. Lower back. Guide your body weight so it's respectfully supported at the very upper back. So I find this to be an exploration of my ribs, particularly with the surprise motion of the rib cage lengthening and expanding at the same time. So your feet might have a positional turnout. That's okay. I wouldn't spend too much energy at making sure those are perfect, but spend the energetics on this hip flexor. The openness of the chest should help your back. So if your back is feeling a little crunch, I want you to make sure you have a small towel under your head. And now the towel could be just completely flat. You could also opt to roll it a little bit under your neck, right? I like to just feel when it's flat and then find the connection of my neck centering. All right. Open the chest via the arms out. Cycle the motion of the breath and just evoking that sensation of inhale, filtering through the nose. Feeling the abdomen expand. And the exhale relaxing out of the mouth. And whatever sounds might be in your environment, see if you can start to center in. Feeling the body shape. And also the movement and the feeling of breath in your body. Now the breath likely stays in cycle upper body, but just having this upper body cycle of breath and the props holding you up, I hope that it helps the hip flexors lengthen. So getting a feeling of the front body, the front spaces lengthening. So we'll give ourselves, in total minutes in this position, but as I like to experiment with the beginning of practice, helping us settle in to the sensations of the posture, the arrival of breathing into your shape. And of course, there may be some things that you need to monitor personally and adjust. It could be that you don't use the belt. Maybe you have the feet stepping on the sides of the blankets to support your back a little easier. So if that doesn't work for you with legs with the belt straight down the blankets, you can always bend the knees and have the feet on the sides of the blanket. Okay, but feeling where the arms just relax. And once you've conformed to the shape of the props, there's usually just a little bounce with the breath, like there's a little extra lift, and then you settle back to the props. And so there's usually a possibility for a slight edge of creating openness in the chest by breathing deeply and relaxing on the out breath. Okay, now I want you to unbuckle, and once you just release the belt connection on the legs, slide it aside, and then bring your legs so that you sort out movement gradually. Slide the feet on the blanket towards your core. So just kind of get a feeling of, oh yes, this is an inversion. My hips are slightly elevated. The circulation into my face is increasing. Just notice those small changes, and then you might be feeling that you're not quite as supported in your upper back when your feet start to scoot towards your seat. So in this position, you're sliding your feet to soul, knees out in cobbler's pose. And if your blanket support is a little bit shifty, right? You're maybe on a block that's on under the blanket. You might try to find where that support is. You might be closer to the bolster than me with your feet. Some people can go quite far up. I like to find what's comfortable in my knees. But I do want you to just give this a moment of trial. It's only going to be a little under a minute for this, but just to feel the openness of the hip joints and that circulation depth as the legs kind of decide where there's length in the inner thigh, right? It's a rare area to really get a full stretch. We do a lot of back leg, a little bit of front leg, but that inner thigh, this is just one of those shapes we can work with. Okay, now is your knees positioned back to point up? Then let's take ourselves off this prop setup just easily. I don't want you to try to force yourself up to sitting and grip your back. I want you to just go easy off of this position. So my knees bend, pointing up, and then I'm just gonna roll over to the left side. Not the easiest transition, but come up so it's no problem on my back. Slide the bolster off of the mat and face towards your blankets and bring your feet on top. Okay, you don't have to sit on anything for this one. You certainly don't want anything under your seat when you're trying to do core. But notice, the knees tend to rotate out. That's just what knees do. They need to do it. Down from the hip. And take a belt, grab a hold of that. If it's buckled, unbuckle it. And use the awareness of your legs lifting to also bring your arms with the belt holding to the feet and scoop around them. And now you've got 2 feet scooped up with the belt. Okay, this is plenty. You might go, okay, this is blending fine for my posture, but I want you to find that you're using your arms now and you're pulling right towards your legs. So slide your feet towards your mid body, so your knees kind of get scooped up, and then see if you can start to work yourself into a seated balance. So the legs lift. Yes, it's similar to boat pose, but I want you to work with circulation kind of demand in your arms and relax the struggle out of the shoulders. So let the inner arm, right? We were just doing inner leg. So use the inner arm position to pull the biceps, contract. And then if you find it's better to bend your knees or even to bring your legs back onto the blankets, fine, that's perfect. But keeping a little bit of core arm strength. So it's like you're kind of center your focus on where is the core of my arm. Is that in my bicep? Is that in my elbow area? But feel core arm, and then try to get those legs, if you have lowered them down, back up, and then see if you can lean back a little bit so there's a slight C shape in your back. And then work with using that little bit of a roundedness in the back, and then pull with your arms so you're moving towards your legs. Lift up through the feet. They don't need to go straight up to the ceiling. It's more of a piked position. Breathing. Yeah, there's a mini moment you can let your eyes close and notice where the center of gravity is. It's in the pelvis usually, but notice where it lands in your hips. Breathe. Yeah, it might be kind of a tense breath in this type of balance. You know, breath is kind of tense when you balance. Okay, now make sure the knees take a very strong bend to lower down the feet. So you find gradual, there's like every pose pattern is you're kind of shedding into transition. So as you slide your feet down onto the blanket, loosen up your grip on the belt. Actually, let's just move it away and then take your bolster. Okay, this might take you a few moments to transition. So I'm going to pull the bolster behind my sacrum, and then I'm going to use my arms. Now, if you're feeling like shoulders a little tense right now to do this type of push-up or a tricep lift, then you might use your feet on the ground and then help yourself to sit up on your bolster, or you can have your feet up onto the blanket and use your arms to help push you back. So let's push back, sit on our bolsters, however you end up, you're on your bolster. And then, how do I want my legs to go here? I want your left knee to bend, your right leg to stretch out, and use a sandbag. I'm going to use a ball under my left knee because it seems like it could use that, but you can use a ball under your knee, or you just can't use a block because it's in front of you. Sand on the left thigh, and then this whole setup here might be a shift here. So you want your blanket, and certainly you want one of your blocks under the blanket where your foot's going to go. Okay, so lift up the right foot. Now, if this takes you some time to get the foot up, like you need a little more stretch with your right leg out to the side, that's okay. You can let it stay out. You could go this way, lean onto the blanket without your leg on it, if that's better for your back. But if you might move your right foot on top so it's in more of a hook position, right? You have the knee pushed out and the foot on top of the blanket. And then your work is in hands back, hold onto the bolster, or hands are on the ground if you're very long-armed. And then lean forward and take a few moments here, just kind of feeling how the foot flexes, feeling how the hip joint balances. Some of you might be familiar with some of these shapes where we would have a bolster right underneath our hands tilting forward. Clearly this requires a little bit more kind of mid-section intensity, right? Because you're not using your arms to hold that leaning position. You're just using your head is tilting forward. And now what if you have more flexibility and you want to lower down? I would keep it so your spine is extending. So it's not rounding, it's not a rounded back, it's an extended spine, like you're trying to sit tall. And then lean forward to stretch into your right leg. Okay, let's give it these two options here. So we've got the right foot either on the blanket, on top of the block, or the foot's on the blanket on top of the block. So here's where we're going to play with this one. So when you are lifting with this foot this high, there's some stomach circulation that has an extra support when your foot's up. So we're going to take a twist to the right and just kind of notice we're going to do two different versions of rotation. If you usually need something under your right hand, I generally would need something here. Feel if you can let your right arm wrap around your waist as a somewhat of an equivalent support. If you're fine with your fingertips touching the ground and you can still sit upright, if you tend to slouch with your hand down, then I would keep it up. But I want you to just notice how the foot in front of you have to use some abdominal control to sit up with the rotation. Okay, now come back forward and then move the ball away from under your knee. Lower your left knee down take the same awareness, but spend a moment just noticing foot is up, okay, before you turn. And now we're going to take this right leg and we're going to try to cross it over the left leg so that right foot is on the other side of the left knee on the ground, like your traditional seated twist. Now, of course, you can feel how that knee or the left leg is kind of making the pose change a little bit. So now when you turn to the right, you could reach your sandbag handle with your right hand. That's kind of a nice connection, isn't it? You can also keep your right hand on the ground or around the waist, but left arm, this is the difference. We're gonna reach it to the right knee, right above the knee onto the thigh, and then feel how the stomach gets this different twist, okay? It's different than when we had the foot on the, well, clearly it's different. So rotate and work on upright. Not uptight, but upright. Going to the right. Yeah, there's a blend of challenges here to find that cooperation of rotation and what is turning. Is it just my waist? Is it my shoulder? So when you unwind and kind of rebound forward, okay, let's take the sand off the left leg. And let's move the right leg back into what you think of as pigeon. Okay, you probably have that little towel back there somewhere, huh? So you might slide that in. I'm going to use that as a benefit here. It's pretty tiny though, isn't it? It's not a very big help, but it's better than nothing. Okay, so slide back. So the right leg is behind you. The left leg is still working into this hip transition. Hip is in transition right now. And then when you lower down, you could pull in your block that's under your blanket. If anything, this is fun to change things up quite a bit today, even if we decide this is a bizarre sequence of things, but feeling how you can use your props just to bring the floor up to you. So if you don't like to use your props under your arms and you find that that's confining your elbows to try to push up, you could always lower down your elbows to the ground space and bring your forehead down to the blankets. This works really good. Okay, this is probably my favorite version, is to have my blanket and block under my forehead. Okay, so feel how the shoulders kind of grow into ease when the elbows are down in this forearm position, pressing. Yeah, try to find where the forearms could be under your shoulders. Or maybe they're not so far forward, maybe they're a little farther inland. Or maybe they're coastal. Kind of play with it a bit. Yeah, if your forehead is on something, relax the body weight into the forehead, let it go. Not a headstand, but it is circulation to the brain. You know, if you're spending most of the energy on the arms and above, and not a lot on the hip, like maybe you feel so much work in the arms that you're not getting that benefit in the hip, let the hands slide back so you are presenting circulation into the waist, into the left leg, and then just push the floor away, feel the arch in the spine, lift your head, and use the arms as a transition. Okay, and as the breathing muscles arch, let's make our way back in towards that left hip seat, and then swing the right leg forward. You're on your bolster still, so the right knee bends, the left leg stretches out. Find where the bolster sitting is. Yeah, I find it to be somewhat challenging to keep my lift up. So all my props are too far away now. I got to bring them back in. But, you know, notice here, even if you put a ball under your right knee or you stuff a towel under there if you don't have a ball, you know, just get that sensation of how your sitting bones find balance on the bolster. So some of us will be a little farther back on our bolster, some will be farther forward. So as you add your sand to the right thigh, then you put that left foot up onto the blanket. Yeah. So we'll go right to it. So we'll turn. We're going to start with the turn this side and just kind of see if we go backwards on this variation on the second side, how that spins around into your core balance. So just notice when you twist left, try to get, you know, rotate so the right hand is on the left knee, the waist turns. Yeah, and if your back is really trying to round and feel more curve, you know, noticing that even when you sit upright, there is a curve internally, right? You're trying to extend up out of the spine, as the spine has 3 natural curves just to exist. There's always some curve going on in there for a happy spine, right? You don't want things to compress and wedge. So you want to create the lift. Okay, so when you go back in towards that forward zone with your core, turn back to the front, and then just lean forward and just get a feel. Now, is it more dominant sensation on left leg? Maybe you feel a little bit in the right leg. Usually if you ask a room of in practice, there's a varied responses. And there might be a generic awareness right now for the legs and the hips, but you know, I try to come back to my centerpiece of my body because usually when I'm, you know, kind of in existence, that's kind of an empty zone. Maybe there's organs there and there's no muscular or bone structure, but that's an area to feel circulation when you're leaning forward. Feel the breath expand. And feeling when you go forward, there's not a lot of contraction actually on the exhale when you're doing a forward bend. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, finding ways to help the body age along. Okay, now that we've had a little moment here, you know, let's take the left leg out. Just place it down on the ground. So you kind of get a feel for when the leg is down. What I like about it is the back of my knee now kind of opens up. So now I remove the ball and we're going to take it just across town like we did last time for the twist. We're just taking a little different cycle of movement. So bend through the left knee and then use your hands to help use the arm structure to cross the left leg over the right. And then as you find that twist to the left again, rotate, you know, and notice where you collapse and where you can lift. There's always the opportunity to collapse in anything, huh? So feel where that right elbow kind of nudges along, and you might have a habit of, oh yes, I can hook my elbow, but I want to round my back to hook the elbow. So I would find that you can let the back have that flexion. Okay, you can feel that rib space stretch and lengthen, but then work with that rebound of going up with the spine and the brain. The brain probably has nothing to do with it, huh? But then turn the waist to the left. Hand could be around your waist. There's probably different sensations, but you're not quite exactly sure what's different on the second side when you're in it sometimes. Okay, and if the right arm is bending or lengthening, you choose. You can bend it, you can straighten it, but feel that rotation. Breathe. Okay, now if the arm, it always feels like you get a little more arm support. But what if you just accept exactly where it ends up with the pressure? Lighten up the pressure, lighten it so the arm slides on that left leg, yep. And then you turn back forward and take the sand off. Okay. Now the left leg's going to move back and we're going to move into right leg pigeon. So left leg moves straight back and then we shift our body weight. So that left thigh, the front of the thigh, you're trying to kind of push down into that bolster with the left quadricep. It's kind of funny. You're just trying to mash it to get some release and then let the left foot relax. You might be off of your blanket, your bolster, or your whole setup. I know you might be back off of your mat here. But use your adjustment skills here, whether you're going to lower down straight onto your blankets, or maybe you're going to lower down onto your elbows. So it's funny how you might have a habit on one side that's different than the other, just even with your arms, not even with the area that you're stretching, but get a feel how that face can lower down into your blankets. You know, and adapt. The back of the pelvis really opens up in this position. So you want to get a feel for the right knee is set open. You know, the hip circulates. Yeah, just feel the balance through the back of the pelvis. Yeah, if you're pulling with your arms to create the position, feel if there's waves of circulation that you can kind of center into, right? Whether it's the hip, and then there might be so much density that you can feel that's building into your hip that you can't move into another area of focus, but you know, feel where your arms can support you. Okay, give it a few more moments because we are going to transition and kind of get our way, a wave of movement eventually to our sage poses, but it'll require some stimulation to shift. Okay, so if my neck is starting to tighten up to get myself out, you might find that when you do move your hands underneath your shoulders, you kind of feel the coiling action here of your neck. You know, just little rebound motion. So when you bring your body weight back, I want you to hook your toes under. I'm off my mat, so there's really no traction at all. Okay, try to find a mat piece if you have to scoot forward for your left foot, and then slide back. And I want you to try to tread a little bit with your feet. So you're alternating, bicycling the legs, and feel the root of the toes, the ball of the foot might be considered the root, back to the heel, and just get a feel of that movement of the legs, knees bending, alternating the bend of the legs, and just feel as you move into maybe a down dog. Maybe that feels too much, so you could be onto your knees, but not on the bolster, right? Knees would be on that towel. And then press the floor away. If you're using just the towel, you'll notice how nice a blanket is under your knees when you just get a small strand of fabric under them. Okay, now move the hands back so you walk them closer towards your bolster, but not all the way. So you're in a pretty short dog. Short dogs. Okay, we're going for short dogs. Okay, which is more hamstring stretch than we're used to, right? Okay, now move all the way back so that you're no longer in a dog shape, if that could be called dog shape, but you're in a forward fold, and take the position of the legs to feel like you're purposely stretching from the heel to the sitting bone. And then from that position, you've got to let your body in the top just release down for the benefit of just surrendering, and get a sense of the sitting bones lifting up. You don't have to pour yourself so far forward you take a somersault, but just get a feel of that shift of balance into your feet, and that spontaneous circulation release through the back, the whole back space, from hamstring to spine strength. Okay, give a few moments to whatever feels good for you. Maybe it's the arms dangling closer to the legs. Maybe it's holding your elbows. Maybe it's hands on the bolster. Give a few more moments here. Yeah, let the neck release down. So if you're kind of holding a little bit at your neck, spend the moment of just letting your head nod a little side to side. Okay, now we're going to transition down to get ready for sage poses. So walk on down with your hands. Use your hands as the forward feet. And then scoot your feet back so that you are back down to hands and knees. Okay, so let's slide our blankets now off of the blocks. Now we finally can move off from that position. Take a block to the very close to the wall. And now you'll have you don't have to be next to a wall actually. You have your two blankets on the other side. This is where, if you got a round bolster, you could switch this out, this flat one for a round one. And I actually kind of like this towel thing here. I don't know. I probably need a bigger towel to make this super plush, but I'm going to sit on my right hip. So is this considered sitting on your hip? That'd be a good question, huh? Okay, let's do a fact check on that. But let's have our bolster. So whatever bolster you have, round, flat, all bolsters are good. But you're towards your bolster and your blankets, and the ball is under that left inner leg. And when you lean in, you got to find your sand to the right hip. You're going down, right? Down onto the right side. Sand is on the external left hip or waist. And now you got to figure out, how high do you want your blanket under your head? After all of that kind of seated pattern, it's nice to let your head just be on something, not necessarily pushing it forward, propelling the balance, but just letting it be on its side on a blanket. Okay, be sure you've got plenty under your head, so that if you were to kind of palpate around the neck, there's not like a tension building in the neck, which is kind of like existence, right? Just sitting up and looking around, the neck gets to keep tightening up. So the left arm could be either overhead onto the block. You can position it just how you like it, right? You can kind of play with it. You can move the arm open. You can let the arm rest on the side of you. You can kind of feel a little bit of those two options, the left shoulder back, the arm down. Yeah, but give yourself some time. So adjusting how that ball is underneath your left leg, you might have to use your right foot to kind of shift it around. Yeah, it's not one pose fits all here. You got to find what works for you with your props. You can see how those of us that are on, and maybe with the round bolster, how it gives a little bit more into the ribs. So I would play around with those options if you have it around. So let's bring the movement of breath into the ribs and just feel how the circulation moves through. So self-study of just how circulation flows through the pose. The arm might be in some motion. It might find a still point. You notice where the mind goes if you tend to move your arm quite a bit, or even if it's one spot that seems to be most soothing to your focus. Okay, so this mid body, right, starting to really kind of feel the ripples into that center space. Okay, so we're going to transition to work on the motion of the intercostals, right, the muscles between the ribs. So slide the sand off of keep it close by, not that the sand can go far anyhow, huh? And then kind of turn down to where your blanket is, and well, I would unroll it so that it's flat, you know. And then when you turn, how blanket is pretty flat anyhow. Okay, that's the flattest prop you can get, huh? And then, besides a mat, okay, place a ball between the knees, and you're onto your bolster. Now, if you have a round bolster, this would probably be even better, it'd be easier, because it just rolls with the ribs, right? Flat is like, it's the resistance, because my ribs, right, if you just look at a skeleton of the ribs, right, it's got contour, and the bolster that's round has contour, and this is flat, so it just doesn't have the same, it doesn't roll with it as easy. Ha ha. Okay. All right. So if you've got a bolster or a round bolster, take that. If you've got a flat, it is what it is. So I have this shape. Now I'm not going to add sand. You could definitely add sand to your ribs. That would be really, really quite helpful for your breathing as well. But this is enough right now for my back to just kind of balance my focus into my breathing. And my knees are certainly bending. Okay, now we do this without the legs. We don't do it without the legs because we still have them on there, but we do this sometimes with the legs straight, right? We'll have a block under our pelvis. Okay, that's a typical opening, restorative opening ceremony. But at this point, we've had some experiences within. So as your body has this opportunity to open out, my neck, I can feel there's this gap here. Right? Do I stuff the gap with a blanket? Well, I'm going to try to work on the strength here in my very base of my neck here below the brainstem. Instead of stuffing it with a blanket, I'm just going to try to keep that natural arch. I might bring my hands behind my head and just kind of lengthen that space out. But you know what's interesting is that our daily habit is so rounded here that going the opposite is almost a little concerning. So see if you can just stay with that. It's certainly better for your vertebral column to have this option versus to jam it up. It's more wedging. And then the spine, gets fragile and fossilizes. So just work with this length. Just try it. If you tip back and you feel like your chin is lifting, that's the direction that you need to go. That's okay. I'd rather have you have a little lift, but you're still supported under your head. I don't want your head to be trying to hold up, because then it pulls into your abdominals, right? And then that tightens up the dynamic. So try to be supported. If you need a round bolster, then that might be what you have to use for your back so that you can be here. Open the chest. Give a few more breaths here. Exhale fully. Yeah, if it feels like you're trying to kind of move into your bones and dig in, if it's been a little bit of time, just noticing, respecting. Take it easy if you need to get out of any of the shapes, and that's fine. Okay, now the knee bending is particularly important here for your back, the cruise into the back. So squeeze, if you have a ball, squeeze into it. If you don't have a ball, you could use a block between the knees here too. The ball responds, it's got responsive surface. You can manipulate it as you squeeze in, right? Resistance. So I want you just to squeeze it. So you don't have to be kind of bouncing back and forth between squeeze and release, but just stay with the squeeze. Breathe at the same time, isolating the worlds of the muscles. And then relax that grip. And then take your time to start to roll to your left. Now, of course, your upper back is kind of plastered to the props, right? It's a little bit. So you've got to let your ribs turn, get the ball, reach down. Just be, how can you be kind of kind to your transition pace? Just easy does it here. You know, try to use that every once in a while. Just when it works out. So take that right leg so it stretches back, right? So this hip flexor lengthens on the right side. And then we've got a ball on the inside of that right leg or a block. And then we come into the side sage on the left hip down. So I'm going to use a blanket height, and that right arm can reach. You might use sand onto the hip. You might decide you don't want any sand, and that's fine. You know, you still get plenty without it, I think. It's basically responsible settling for the bones. I think the sand is more for the bones. It's grounding, it's weight bearing. If it just isn't something that you're find that you want to work through to tug on sand and all that, you can always pass on the sand. Okay, so the right arm, now it's not really just an arm, right? It's the connection of moving the ribs. So you might even just go slow, your own pace of awareness. Maybe you just breathe and feel how the ribs expand. The motion of the intercostals lifts the ribs. And how much air you get into the lungs depends on the movement of your ribs. Right? For most of us, that's kind of stuck, right? We've got belts on, or things kind of pull things in, and it's not very expansive. So just try with your practice to kind of let go, move with the breath, just feel the internalizing focus. That's all. Give it a few more moments here, settling. Be sure your knee is okay on the right leg. So if your knee is starting to feel a little bit of glue or grip on the inside of the knee, you might need to monitor and move that knee a little closer to the midline versus farther back. It's not going to make it better if you force it to stay where it hurts. Doesn't seem like intelligence. The body's telling you something. Arm could be overhead, but if it hurts, some days it actually feels pretty good. Some days I can feel it choke up around the shoulder, and some days we're going for some spaciousness inside of the arm. One side could be different. Okay, now if you're on the back of your head, you might roll to the side and just kind of feel the difference even in your breathing. Okay, now as you shift this right arm, instead of going back right to our back, we're going to be shifting our right arm over to the left and down, and then roll out, okay? And let's go to a wall space with our feet to the wall. So what you'll do is you'll take your sand away. Let's see, your blanket can go to the side, the ball can go to the side, the sand, the bolster, just get rid of it all. All you really need is your blanket, and pretty close to the wall actually, because your knees are going to go to that. And that's too close. Okay. And then as you put your knees on the blanket, just scoot back to your wall space. Take a stack, well, take your blocks in front, put them a little bit on the edge of your mat so you can see where my hands are positioning. So the palms are down. And then feel where the fingers spread out. And just kind of notice, is it better for you to have it closer in under your shoulder or farther forward? How the angle is on your neck? All these things get more interesting as you mature in your practice, your decision making. And so you start to kind of feel what works for your body. So I find my arms are a little set, my hands are set forward from my arm, so it's more at an angle. And that allows me to get more space here. So turn your hands out so your thumbs are kind of more forward than your index fingers, and let the hips stretch down. So kind of like seal, isn't it? Okay. All right, so let the waist lengthen. See if you can lift up. Yeah, it's kind of like how seals get around, right? They've got their, and then they kind of flow through. So when you come back to table, fingers stretch back forward, round your back so the chin goes to your chest, right? That helps your back lift. Inhale, just keep the hands where they're at, arch the spine. Try to get the tail to move back and up. So it's almost as if the tail and the crown of the head are moving away from each other, but they're almost getting closer when you go to that shape of cow, and then round the back to cat, chin to chest. Inhale, arch the spine. Exhale, round, let the chin move in, the spine stretch. And then inhale, arch. Last time. Okay, kind of feel how that arch is in the body. And then take a shape so that we get our blocks. Okay, and I would just have them at the second setting just so it's easeful. Once you lift up a little bit on those blocks, you can feel how that arch kind of balances. And then just go ahead and step your right foot forward. Use the left foot at the wall. Now, sometimes I overuse the wall on this one. So when I lift up my back knee, you might get a feel like your foot's plastered to the wall. You might as well step it up higher, right? That's not a great idea for your joints. So you want to feel like you can push into the wall, but maybe get your blocks up again. So they go a little higher. It's as high as they're going to go. So I've got the right knee above the ankle. You can kind of look at your positioning shape, right? So if you get a feel for your right knee, it's not over the toes. It's right above the ankle. And then really press back into that wall and see if you can start to get some balance between your heel and your knee, right? So this area gets very plugged in, okay? Now reach the right thigh to length. So you're gonna push back, you're gonna stretch your left heel towards the floor next to the wall, or a little bit up at the wall. You can move it up to the baseboard so it's a little lifted. You can lower it down all the way, maybe not all the way, but you try. Take the blocks back besides your right foot. So let them span out as wide as you want on the mat space. And then feel if you can lean forward. If you go farther down, that's fine if you take your blocks lower. But I want you to try to develop this mid body. You know, kind of imagine like if there was a table, you've probably done a pose like this. Maybe you've seen it in books, or that you'll do a standing. This is Parsvottanasana. So you're trying to stretch your trunk. It's always funny to see this in a book where there's an actual large like table and someone's stretching their torso on the table. You know, their arms are up, but we don't have that reality here. So use your mid-body strength to hold yourself up, okay? We're not gonna work further in the hamstring, this is plenty. But I want you to just notice here, if you can bring your block on that left side under your left hand, so it's in line with your left foot, same track. Look back at your left foot, block is about the same track, maybe just a titch to the left of it. Okay, now micro bend your right knee. It's a little bend. Turn the waist to the right. Oh, I can feel the back leg and the right hip. Bring the right arm out. And maybe it goes straight out here. Maybe it goes to your sacrum. Maybe it goes out, but let it be wherever it works for your balance. Yeah, there's quite a bit of intensity now into the left calf, maybe the right hip. Yeah, turn your head to look down to your left hand. Maybe your hand is really forced into the block at this point. So what I want you to do is to bring your right hand down to the block on the other side. And then see if you can just take the weight off of your left hand for a moment. Just take it off, the hand goes up off the block. place it back down, take both blocks, right, wide stance with the blocks out wide, lengthen, bend the right knee, bend, 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 so you're pushing that left foot back into the wall, the heel works fine, okay, step the left foot to the right foot, just take a moment where you go, okay, I feel there's some differences. Stretch out the back of the knees, so you're lengthening the back. Take your blocks way far forward now, out to the sides, but forward. And then just get a feel of both legs, the back of them. Okay, maybe let your head kind of bow down. Okay, measure the sensation. If you need to step your feet apart right now, that's fine. You can kind of scoot them a little bit apart. Yeah, maybe the back of the right leg feels a little bit of definition. Okay, now blocks go back, right foot steps back. You just get a feel here as you reach back into that right heel, the knee is bending on the left leg. Push off of that back heel, push, push, push through into the wall. Have your blocks close to the sides. Last time we started lower and then we went up, but now we're already there. So feel this front of the back thigh. Since we stretched so much on the back of the leg, that probably is a little stiff. The front of the right leg. So work your way into that lunge. All right. Should feel like there's muscles, gripping, resisting. It's all resistance, right, for the bones. It's the one way we can work with this and practice for the bones is the resistance, that factor. And then if you feel that you can lift your head a little bit, you tilt your chin so it's reaching forward versus down. Feeling where that energy moves through the spine, just by moving your head. Okay, and trust your balance. Maybe you don't have to look down at the floor of your blocks to trust this. But you're going to scoot that right heel down towards the base of the wall. Yeah, it's different on the second side, most likely. Doesn't quite go the exact precise length, but lengthen out the left leg. Try to straighten it a bit. Yeah, and if that back calf is pretty stuffy, right? If it's got some cobwebs in it, just work with, maybe lift the heel, stretch it back. But what will benefit you more with that balance of weight difference is to move your blocks a little bit back. Maybe move your hands so there's less pressure on the hands. See if you can use your body weight to stretch into that back leg. Now I feel the left leg stretch quite a bit here. Maybe not a massive amount, but there is some. And as the right hand goes onto that block, I'm going to turn that left arm and turn the waist to the left and lift up. Now I can take my right foot and step a little bit out to the right side so the foot is still nearly parallel, a little tiny bit turned out. But for me, my back heel is not touching down exactly. Okay, so you might find on your dominant leg, the leg you step out with most of the day first, that calf could be a little tighter. So that's typical. So when you rotate your waist, your hand could be on your back, your hand could be up, right? You can rest it, you don't have to lift it, but feel how the waist turns. And the left leg has a little micro bend. Breathe. Keep the resistance going with the legs, powering through. And then feel when you twist, and then when you counter twist, come back down through center. Lengthen through the torso. Okay, this time we're going to lower down to the back knee. So lower it down. See how you started on that first side. You feel a little bit of that lunge. Careful. Okay. And then guide your left leg back and take a moment where you shift your blocks off to the side and you stretch your knees apart, but we're not child posing here. We've got our feet pushing into the wall. Your hands stretching out back to that seal. Turn the fingers out, thumbs forward. That webbing between the thumb and the index, I want that to try to span out as best as you can if it hurts. then I want you to work with the index finger a little closer towards the front, turning forward. So, right, that can be a specific area. So let the hips lower down and lengthen that front. You still have to use your arms for resistance here. I mean, there's no other options there. You'll be just flat as a pancake if you didn't have the arms on this pose. So lifting up, be a starfish. Okay, lengthen the torso. And then even better yet, come back to table. Okay, take your blanket from under your knees, shift it forward to where your hands were, and then roll into your back and bring your knees into your chest. Okay, so hold on to the back of the legs and let the body rock side to side. Yeah, just get a feeling. I know this is certainly a variety of potpourri practice. Okay. So let the legs feel a little bit of that rocking. It's very subtle, but I want you to kind of gel into your lower back as if it's like this gel pack. You're trying to kind of mush it a little bit. You know, like when one of those ice packs is kind of like warming up. You're trying to ease that back space right now. And then once the feet come up to the wall, you're distancing from the wall. You can trick that out a little bit, but take a moment just to feel your feet at the wall, however they land, and then feel how the back of the pelvis centers. Again, kind of that gel pack in the back. So I'm trying to keep it widening from right side of the waist to the other, just keep a little bit of space there. So I love the feet at the wall because it kind of helps that space in the back feel defined. The feet pushing at the wall, but higher up, right than the floor. Okay, so you get to choose ball between the knees or block or nothing. It could be any of those. I can see benefit to any of them. And they're all different. So instead of going over all those differences, you just choose ball, block, nothing. Okay, so there's a space between the knees, whether it's something there or nothing. Okay, and then the blanket is an option. I think it's helpful to have it really low, so there's some padding, but having too much, never a good idea for the neck. Right? Can't see why you want to crunch your chin down, but get a feel for the space of lifting the hips and stretching through. And actually, when I push into the wall and lift my hips up, I can feel my back, a little bit of tension, like strengthening up on the paraspinals, right? So when you lower down, you want that area to lengthen down, okay? So just focus on that. Your hands could be besides your hips. Your hands could be going overhead when you lift your hips like so. I kind of like this. This just feels good in my ribs. Okay, and then breathe and adjust all the things that you need to. Like if your blanket's not entirely right, you might have to work with that. You don't have to work with it not being right. So keep fussing around. Okay. Now, if you see my variation and it seems like my feet are a little up and it isn't perfect, what I'm focusing on is that it feels like it's massaging into my back. That's all I care about. Not that it looks perfect or I have my lines exactly right, but feel through your back touching down. Okay. And when you lift your hips up, there's a touch into the back. It's like touch, upper back, and then there's touch into the middle and the lower back as you lower down. I know there's a hamstring issue though too, isn't there? Okay, there's hamstring strength on it. So last time you go up with something focused center and lower down. Okay, bring the knees to your chest carefully so you span the back and then remove the ball. And if you've got a block or you have one between your knees, you're going to use that. So what I want you to do is bring your feet to the wall, and you might have to move your seat. You might have to use your elbows to bring yourself closer to the wall. This is fun stuff because then you're going to use all these different body parts to try to scoot yourself around, like your triceps are pulling you. So now what you're going to do is keep your blanket flat, nothing too high. You're gonna lift up your hips and you're gonna either put your block, remember you walk your feet up the wall for this to get more span in your spine, more span, spine span, bridge span, it's a bridge pose. So your block can go under the pelvis. Now, if I try to put it really high up and it tilts a little bit, that's actually great, right? Whenever I see that in class patterns and I see that the focus is to tilt the block, first I thought, well, that's not smart, but it's kind of how your spine is shaped, right? The base of the spine shape, the wedge, the sacrum tilt. But mine ended up being pretty flat. Now my block could be this high, it could be the second setting, and then my circulation in my throat changes quite a bit. Okay, I've length at my neck, and then I lower my feet down at the very base. So this is a nice opening in the front. Like we did in the beginning, but this is like an advanced version. So the shoulders, they kind of roll on the back, but it's more my pecs, my chest muscles that stretch open. Okay, now let's say your block is lower. Let's say you're a little bit lower height. It's okay. If you're a little lower, that's fine. You don't have to achieve the uncomfortable. That's okay. If this doesn't work for you to have it higher, you can have it the second setting. Still bring your feet down. Still roll the shoulders. Chest open. Yeah, and it feels maybe a little bit easier. But for me, I find I really want my hip flexors to stretch and elongate. Just don't get that opportunity, you know, kind of ever, it seems, in my daily habit. Sitting, walking, it's just a place that could use that openness for my stomach muscles, for my psoas, my walking muscle. So give it a few moments, let your head relax. Of course, your chin is going to scoot in a little bit here. What's a chin to do? And rest your brain content, right? Feel how we change the movement subtly in the brain. But the breath focus in this last half of the session, right? This last piece, it's a little still. You know, let's say you had your block any of these heights, the second setting or the third. You might bring your feet up at the wall when you're starting to complete the shape. I personally like this version with my feet down. I don't really want to get out of it, but if you want to bring your feet up at the wall so you think that'll be easier on your back, you could just step your feet up to the wall, and that feels pretty good. I can push a little bit into the wall. I can press into the upper back of my shoulders, and that lengthens my neck. You kind of play with it. Again, if you guide yourself into this shape and it feels uncomfortable, then you might need to get out. Pose responsibly. Find what works for you. You know, if you haven't tried putting your feet on the wall, I think you should before you come out. I like this circulation into my upper back, clearly into your thyroid, right? Your throat. You can feel the circulation gets really busy in this position. And now use your feet to push. Now you might have to get to the ball of the foot and not to the heel. So it might be better for you to feel the springy part of your foot. And then lift, but just lift a tiny bit to slide the block out. Don't overdo it. And then let your spine lower down. Yeah, if you feel a little, or maybe if you have any scoliosis tendency, be careful that you try to lengthen it even here. Okay, now before you take the twist, you want to be sure your back feels pretty lengthened out. Okay, and then I'm going to take my blanket and make it a little higher under my head, just a little bit so it's in that quarter fold. And then as I scoot my feet down, I'm actually going to need to move back again. Scoot back and take a bolster to the right side of your mat and take a crossover. So head is back on the blanket. Get a ball Yeah, make sure the bolster is flat. Right leg straight, left leg over to the bolster. Ball of the sacrum is very important here. And sand on the left outer leg, maybe. Maybe not for everybody. Yeah. There's no wrongs with the sand. I mean, some might go, I want my sand on my ribs. Some like the sand on their armpit. I mean, it really is a traction opportunity for you to get some grounding with the sandbag. And the left arm, it just kind of flings open. It doesn't have to be exact height. It just doesn't really work for the living tissue, does it? Like having these pose particulars doesn't work for all of us. So feel the generic, range that it goes, and then really sense into your skin how the tissues kind of evolve into the shape. So feel the self-study, how circulation moves through your body. That was kind of my first thought when thinking about this session, but forgot about it. Till halfway, and that was what I was programming my mind for. And your head might be best just right in the center. It might be best to the left, or even to the right. Breathe slow. Exhale completely. And noticing what parts hold back from letting go. It might be something that's opposite where you have the stretch. It might not be the outer leg, it might be the inner leg. So really use your props to support you. Okay, now second side, I want you to transition between the two sides to what works for you. It could be knees to chest. It could be windshield wiper legs. And so, just kind of feel, how does your back pressure feel when you bring your knees in the center? So if it doesn't feel like you have a lot of back pressure, I would go windshield wiper. If it feels like a little bit of decompression will be better than knees to chest would be better. This is not knees to chest, but this is another variation. Knees swing side to side. The feet need to be wider than hips distance apart for it to really work into your glutes. But some consider this glute massage work, So obviously if you have ball under one of the glutes, it might be a true massage, so you could do that. But I sometimes like to kind of go, okay, this is considered that. I'm going to give it a try. And if I don't believe it so, I'm going to see if I can one day find a little bit of glute movement. Maybe it's to get the lower back to stretch down into the glute, and then that kind of decompresses. Okay, so now we set for the second crossover. Now, whatever you got out of the knee swinging side to side windshield wiper is just fine. Okay, now you can tell knees side to side does help you get to the next shape. So if your knees were to your chest, lower your feet down for all of us. Take the bolster to the left as mentioned, and then let the left leg. Now you can kind of come into the position from kind of side swiping in. So you don't have to have it like on a straight back, my straight leg, toes up, and then cross over. That doesn't seem to go with the contours of our bones. It's all turning and weaving. And so, age like a tree. Just go look what's out there. How does it change with time? So find what your root would be in this position, which is kind of rootless, right? Because you're on your back, you don't have the footing, but you have your whole spinal column to contour. And I love that using the ball for my sacrum area. It may not be right on my sacrum, but I think this is a nice kind of anchor. And then add your sand, outer right leg. Yeah, get a hold of the weight and then feel when you kind of put it onto you. And let the right arm relax out. And then just get a feel. Your head might turn to the right. The weight might be into that right leg with the sand. If it feels like there's inner leg tension, you might find better to have sand closer to the knee. You know, I find that's a little easier on my knee. If I have my sand at my hip, it kind of has the tension kind of draft into the knee, so it's up to you. But as you turn, noticing how much your waist turns, how much your leg twists a little bit to the left to help your hip. And it's all in benefit of the hip, isn't it? That's what they say. So head turns or it's centered, one or the other. Left hand anywhere it feels comfy for you, maybe on your belly, feeling your body breathe. And now feeling where the body weight is on your upper back. Yeah, or you feel like it turns to your right side, or is it still dominant on the left? You know, even if there's more to stretch in the hip, even if you feel like it stayed the same intensity the whole time, it was a stretch, but it didn't, you know, the tension didn't dissipate. So I want you just to notice what what energy disperses, what happens into your leg, top of the leg, into the pelvis, the hip. And then the idea is to flush it out. So when you take the sand away, you stay kind of left directionally. So roll to your left. And as you come up, you're going to slide your bolster to the wall, right at the base, right flat. So you got a flat bolster. You could use a round bolster for it. Some people love using round bolsters for this, but I'm sticking with the flat. And then what I'll have is my sand and just my bolster and my blanket. So let's come to Viparita Karani. So we're going to set up. Sometimes knowing what we're doing is not helpful, is it? So sometimes directions just towards it, then you don't have an idea what it should be. So I sit next to my rear, right? My sitting bones to the wall. So I'm leaning down like I'm gonna lie onto my side. And then I roll up, so I can never be far enough on the left or the side. Whatever side you roll up from, you can almost never be far enough over and get upside down, because you might fall off the other side. So try your best to scoot your back to center on the bolster. I think being centered on the bolster is kind of ideal. And then feel what arch occurs. And if you need to get closer, keep working with it. But if there's a little space, that's okay. It's okay to have space between your body and the wall. Okay. Now, as I take my sand onto the feet, I want to adjust my back muscles after I get my sand up there. So curl the knees into your chest. And as the legs lift, feel the landing of the heels to the wall. And then the flushing of the legs into your hips. So, you know, this back span that's on the bolster, you can always use your thumbs and kind of reach, you know, so it's like, you know, if you have the webbing between the thumb and the index, let's say you kind of bring that to your hips. And you're trying to use your thumbs to kind of stretch that flesh out. Maybe if I pull my pants, it will do it. But you are trying to get there to be a feeling of kind of like a base, like not just your bolster, but your pelvis is a base. So the weight bearing goes into the pelvis, the hips. Because, you can, even if this density changes, and I'm not sure what it does, how did I get that improved in the hip? These are the types of poses. So just work with also finding ease with it. So let your spine center back. Have the blanket just where you like it. Maybe it's lower than this. Maybe you don't like this type of height under your head. Some people do just fine with a very thin, or maybe that towel. If you have an eye pillow, you could put that over your eyes or just use your eyelids closing as a built-in eye pillow. But to negotiate a way to use the eyelids as little pillows over the eyes is a whole different series of work, isn't it? So let the spine settle, feel all the bone pieces that can work towards balancing, right? Equilibrium. And then arms just release. They could be down, closer to the wall. They could be farther out in cactus, elbows out, hands straight back. Good. And then just come into the shape to receive wellness and feeling the body flush out. Feel the weight series into the hips. And noticing if you can begin to receive your breath and relax on the out breath. Inhaling for a count of 4 to 5. And exhaling for 5 to 6. Now, if your body weight seems to be distributed mostly in your pelvis, like that's where you feel it kind of congregates, try to let some of that body weight feel like it's a little bit in your ribs. And that's defined by breathing deeply and also, it takes some trust in your connection to yourself, I think, to start to develop this collaboration with circulation inside and just a dynamic, so the traffic in the body starts to go really nicely. There's no holdups. The merging is good through the organs. So feel the belly, body move with the breath. It's a life's work, so gently observe. And then let's bend the knees and take a time of movement to get the sand away. Maybe you toss it overhead. I can't hear if it does. So you slide the sand away. You feel the knees in that kind of curled spine position. Your feet could be back up at the wall, you decide, but noticing how the circulation is internally. And you could continue with this for minutes ahead if you feel like you don't want to come out, that's fine. But I'll follow through with shifting it. But those of you that want to stay upside down, you can certainly stay. And then as you opt into bending through the legs, the curling pattern in the spine. Feel if this is a true curl in the back. It's kind of a little bit of a curly cue in the spine. And then roll to the side. Now, if you were rolling more left today than right, I think we did 2 left turns. Maybe you go to the right, just so we have some balance. Take your seat up to the wall. So you're seated next to the wall in your bolster, cross-legged or cobbler, feet together, knees out. That feels kind of nice because it pushes my upper back of my beam to the wall, a little better than cross-legged. And just simply bring the hands to merge together at the very root of the heart, bowing into your heart center. And just collect